Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's true in every aspect of life, but I think we especially had to learn it here.
Were you in contact with anybody on the mainland that like that could tell you this is what's happening here in California?
Yeah, we could, but they didn't know anything either.
Right.
Know, so.
It was, I mean, so the timeline here, remind me what the timeline was, because you went on the cruise, because you were on a 15-day cruise, right?
Right. It was the end of February, and we ended up, we went into quarantine. I think it was, I don't know, like maybe the 1st of March.
Okay.
And, or a couple days into March, and we were there, I think, until like March 10th. So we were confined to our room for 6 days. And that was the toughest part.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, okay, what are we going to do next? I mean, it's, all right, and we did variety of activities that kept us entertained.
Right. You also mentioned that you make, first of all, your dad jokes in this, like land ho. You make a joke about if you'd seen land, you'd yell land ho, and you're glad, your wife's probably glad that you didn't embarrass her with that.
I do that quite frequently.
I was going to say, are you the dad joke guy? Like, Dad, I'm hungry. Hi, hungry. Nice to meet you.
Not quite that cornball, but yeah.
Okay. Because then you talk about how you're getting onto an elevator and you're like, you wanted to make the joke. I don't suppose it'd be funny if I started violently coughing, would it?
Right.
So were other people finding humor in this too? Did you see that throughout the ship? Or were you kind of feeling alone on that?
I hadn't thought about it till you asked right now, but I don't guess I saw a lot. I didn't stop to think about it.
Sure.
I was just kind of having fun, and
right.
My humor gets me in trouble at times, especially when I'm preaching, but yeah.
Give me an example. How does your humor get you in trouble?
I when I'm preaching, some of this I can't.
That's fine.
Accidental faux pas that end up being a little unintentionally R-rated.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So your timeline, you started, you said end of February. So you said March, about the 1st of March, you guys went into the quarantine. What was the timeline of your thinking of, this is no big deal to wait? Is this a big deal? What's going on? Or should we be scared? Should we be panicked? How are we going to be okay?
It sort of grew. At first it was like, all right, so we're here for a couple of days. I can handle a day or two in our cabins, and and then we began to realize, okay, we're going to be here longer than we thought. Maybe this is a bigger deal than we realized. Overall, my wife and I stayed pretty calm. We would tend to be towards the side, especially my wife, on the end of the spectrum that it's being exaggerated. We felt like all the way through, even with our stay at Travis Air Force Base, that the press tended to make a bigger thing over it than what we were actually experiencing.
Okay.
Because they love the doom and gloom stories, but yeah.
Right. Now, you've mentioned to me, and you mentioned already on the podcast already, that the theme here is hope. So when you started to write this, was that originally you're like, man, people need hope right now? Or is that just kind of what came out as you started to write?
I think it came out more or less. I mean,
your devotionals already were
devotionals were geared that way, but I like I said, went back and tweaked them, and the devotional book came out right around Christmas time, just before Christmas. It was interesting. I remember the time I was going to put the devotional book out, and then I was driving, just getting on the freeway on 101 right off College Avenue. I mean, being specific.
And this is like December 2019?
This was about the first book. This was in like around May or something.
Oh, okay.
And I just felt that the Lord was telling me, you need to write this book.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, wow. And I just whipped it out. I mean, it was beyond my abilities as a writer. And it should have taken months and months. Within a couple of months, it was done. And total process, edited, all that.
And when did you actually release it?
It was around the middle of June 20th, something around there.
Wow, so you really did do that super quick.
It was super quick.
Wow,
yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah. So I was going to ask this because the unknown, right?
Right.
Saying we're going to be in our room for a couple days, that's fine. Ended up being, you said 6 days, right?
6 days.
So that's kind of what ended up happening here with the church too, as well, because we were told 2 weeks that we were going to be, shelter in place. And it was, mid-March. So we're thinking, are we going to be able to have Easter services? Well, 4 months later, we're going, oh my goodness, this is still going on. We still haven't had services since this happened. Right. I think we went 13 or 14 weeks here at Spring Hills with no services until we were able to start doing them outside.
Wow.
And everything was just online and stuff. So was there ever a time where you felt hopeless? And I say that as as the church, just knowing like this started to feel hopeless of like, are we ever going to be able to have our church together again, or anything like that? Did you feel hopeless at all within this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would say hopeless, but I remember standing down on the balcony just mad and going, this isn't right. Why, how long is this going to go on? What a bummer. I mean, this was supposed to be our vacation, and this is how it goes. And I'm just kind of like moaning and groaning before God. And, I really sensed, from the Lord, it's like, what are you going to do about it? Like, well, nothing. Okay, well, trust me with it.
Right.
And I felt a certain amount of release, at that point. And, it was a discipline to come back to, again, staying in the moment was a really big deal. Mm-hmm. That was super important. So, I did have those kind of moments at times, but the principles that I talk about in the book really helped.
Did you feel like a prisoner? I'm not saying. Did you feel like? Did you say that you could you say that you were you really understood what Paul was going through?
Oh, I wouldn't want to go that far. No, but I do think that there was times when it's like I just want to step out and walk down the hall,
and you can't.
I mean, no, I couldn't.
Yeah. So I don't know. Again, I don't know you super well. I know you well enough to know that you've got a sense of humor about things, and I can't imagine. I'm a little bit of a doomsday kind of person when it comes to not necessarily of the panic of like how serious I think this is, but more of just like well, we're gonna be here forever now. I don't know what we're gonna do, and I just get I snowball pretty hard, pretty quick with those kinds of things. So I can't imagine being stuck in a room and getting a little bit mad and then being able to just surrender it to God and kind of feel that release. I can't relate to that because I feel like I would probably yell at a few people before I got to that
I don't
point.
want you to think it was like I flipped a switch and all of a sudden it's,
Sure.
Rainbows and unicorns and all that, it was, there were those moments, but I do think, when you're kind of stuck like that, it's almost like you have no option. And that sounds bad, but you have no option but to trust God. And it's like, okay, that's a good place to be.
Right. Were you able to see any positives while you were there?
Oh, sure. You mean for us personally or just overall?
Yeah. I mean, for you personally, for just the situation as a whole. I'll give you an example. We do an adventure week every year where we have on campus here, we've got 400 or 500 kids. And when June came around, we realized we're not going to be able to do this on campus, so we're going to have to adjust here. So we did it all online, and it ended up being, granted, we're still really bummed out that we weren't able to be on campus. We realized as we gave these are boxes of activities for the kids to do. So this adventure week's for, kindergarten through 6th grade. And so we delivered these boxes to people. Parents are crying that their kids are going to be able to have something to do, thanking us, that kind of thing, and seeing the fact that the parents – usually, they drop their kids off on campus, they leave, they come back and pick them up. Now, the parents are actually hearing the gospel preached as well by watching these videos with their kids. So we're, finding the silver linings like that of like, you know what? How many parents are hearing the gospel this week because they're actually doing Adventure Week with their kid instead of just dropping them off? So that kind of positive. What kind of positives were you seeing in this situation? Oh,
there were some amazing things. I mean, early on, even before we went on the cruise, because it didn't make sense for us to go in some ways, but we both, Linda and I both sensed that there's some reason we're supposed to be on this cruise. And we didn't really know what it was. We did feel like, when we did interact with people, there were a few days when we found out we might be stuck here before we were actually confined to our quarters. We tried to, really instill messages of hope. One of the things, and we had also opportunities, lots and lots of interviews, interviewed on the San Francisco affiliate, NBC and ABC several times. Was interviewed by KGO Radio Live a couple of times, and it was live, so I was able to talk about Jesus.
Yeah, and they couldn't shut you down.
No, and so, but they came back for a second one, so it was great.
Sweet.
And then interviewed in the newspaper 5 or 6 times, while we were there. So even the Today Show, we did interviews on the Today Show and Good Morning America, but. One of the things, let me just read this to you if I could. It's a quote from Thriving in Quarantine, my first book. And it says, after I talked about the interviews, it says, we couldn't ignore the irony. Here we were, confined to our quarters on the open seas and isolated from other human beings, yet God gave us a far-reaching platform so that we could share his hope and peace, a larger platform than any we had ever experienced in all our ministry. And then I add, God has the best sense of humor in the universe, and he loves to surprise us. In the Old Testament, he spoke through a donkey, for goodness sakes. So I guess he can speak through me. So, and I found that very ironic that we would be stuck out in the middle of nowhere, and we've had more influence probably during that time than any other time in my ministry, which is,
I think that's a great example, too, of just what the church kind of went through, because we're seeing, when we were doing the online stuff, seeing, thousands and thousands of people watching online services, and we're going, you know what, a lot of these people probably wouldn't have been at church today or something, but now they just came across it on Facebook, or they came across it on YouTube. And I think it's the Church Online, like the Craig Groeschel group, that they put together a platform for churches to be able to stream their services live. And it was, I forget the numbers now, but it was just an overwhelming number of people watching services on Easter Sunday, which was so cool, because Easter Sunday is already a highly attended week of the year, but just hearing, wow, this is the message of the gospel's getting out in numbers online that we, I couldn't have imagined. And so we started to see God working pretty amazingly through some very frustrating times for us as humans, and just having to be like, oh, no, God doesn't know what he's doing. How many times does that happen? We draw out blueprints. And,
well, Romans 8:28, all things work together for good. So I think that's,
So real quick, I want to know a little bit more about the response that you've had, because we did talk about how, it's a tricky, tightrope to walk here with people being, there's a lot of sensitivity towards the issue, especially if someone has had family members pass away from the coronavirus, and you finding humor through something that you're not finding humor through the coronavirus. You found humor through your experience on this cruise. But have you had any backlash with this, of people feeling like you were making light of a serious situation?
I got on Amazon one negative review. Most of them have been overwhelmingly positive, but this person said, here this guy's a pastor and he shows no compassion for the people that are, here you are, dead bodies floating on the ocean, and you're making, and it's like, okay, buddy, you weren't there. So.
But it's also probably the one that sticks out to you the most, right?
Yeah, that's how it is. You notice the black spot on the white piece of paper,
but it stands out.
But I would say overall it's been it's been great.
Yeah.
The response has, and the book's done really well. It was the #1 bestseller on Amazon in 3 categories.
Oh, cool.
And travel, short reads, and stuff like that.
Yeah, it is a short read. That is something that I noticed just when I was thumbing through it. I think I read the first 2 chapters in about 10 minutes. It's not, which actually I think is one of the reviews says it's too short, right?
Yeah. And, when I've thought about that, I thought, probably could have developed the characters a little more. And
I still think you did a great job doing that, because I've never met your family, but I'm like, I understand Tiffany and Scott, and I understand, my wife can get embarrassed by me sometimes. So, I understand where Linda's coming from if she's embarrassed that you yell land ho, things like that. So I thought you did a great job with that. I did also see there was one review that wasn't a negative review, but it was somebody saying, this wasn't our experience, but it's cool to see another perspective of this experience. Someone else that was on the cruise, I think they said, right?
Right. And there was also some reviews that, this really represented our experience. And one person, in fact, said we were on the very same bus you were on that went to Travis. And so, wow, okay.
Have you been in contact with any of the people that you were on cruise with?
Yeah, some. They contacted me, especially, I put it on Facebook about there's a Facebook page for, the Grand Princess relatives and so forth. So I put this on there, and people have responded back. And, a lot of the people that were passengers have read the book.
Cool. And you also mentioned that you met some people on the cruise that were doing a Bible study.
Right.
Any contact with those people?
Not that I know of. I haven't heard anything back from any of them, and I wish I'd gotten, email.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer. You said you weren't able to join their Bible study that day, but that's really cool that people were doing that on their vacation, on their cruise.
We were very pleasantly surprised. And it's fun. It's fun to you know how it is. You're somewhere and you meet somebody that's part of the body of Christ, and you go, wow, there's boom. Instant connection. Right.
Yeah. And then you also hear, I've met people in the past where, a guy I bought a guitar from in Nashville, randomly